24th, 2024 to order. Sue, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Bailey?
Here.
Counselor Carbone? Counselor Clancy? Here. Counselor Durick? Counselor Rhodes? Counselor Timbrow? Counselor Zambrello?
Well, she is logged in. So,
Okay. Deputy Mayor Forrest? Mayor Lesser?
here. Thank you, Sue. Hello. Nice to see you gentlemen here.
Thank you.
Nice to see, I like to talk about the oldest continuous volunteer fire department in the United States. That is one of our great claims to fame in Weathersfield, and if my math is correct, 221 years from 1803. So it's great to have you guys, gentlemen, here on a beautiful night. Erica and Mike, thank you for being here. And Anthony, I think you're first, if I'm
Yes,
right.
sir.
So Anthony, you're up, please.
Okay, just go over the Fire Marshal budget. Just a
text
brief overview of what we do. We take all our orders, our requirements in the state of Connecticut under Chapter 541 of the Blue Book, the general codes of the state of Connecticut general statutes. Our office is basically broken up to 5 areas that we provide. 1 is code enforcement and compliance, 2 is customer service, 3 is investigations, 4 is fire prevention, and 5 is alarm monitoring and reporting. Presently, I'm the full-time fire marshal. I have 2 part-time inspectors, one 19 and a half hours a week and one 15 hours a week. I also have a volunteer fire inspector within the fire department and a volunteer fire investigator who also works for my office as needed. Last year, just a snapshot and what we actually performed. We had 2,265 activities. Activities were broken down to inspections, plan reviews, fire prevention, investigations. We saw an uptick in inspections, which is always good because we're mandated by law to perform these inspections. So last year, we were able to get 688 inspections done. Also, fire investigations were up slightly last year, up to from 111 to 134. So our activity the past 5 years has been pretty steady. We did see, like I said, we did see an increase, but part of that, last year in the budget, the town council approved the second part-time inspector for the office, so we did get more work done, which there is work to be done out there, so it was a great help. Pretty much that's what we do. And now I'll just cover the highlights of the budget, the numbers. Overall, actually, our budget went down as far as the supplies and other materials. Most of the increase in my budget was contractual, based on the latest contract for salaries. We saw a slight decline in workman's comp, and we went down about $1,000 in supplies because last year I had to buy an iPad and another laptop for our office. So that's where the slight decrease came from. We're not requesting any positions. I did have a meeting with the town manager of possibly getting another vehicle, a police vehicle that may be coming off the line soon as they buy new ones. So we're still addressing that. So that's right, it's not really in the budget. But other than that, that's pretty much what we got.
Thank you, Mr. Fire Marshal, and I always get a ton of compliments about you and the work you do. So, counselors, any questions? Counselor Bailey, Counselor Clancy?
So you have
Counselor Bailey.
Michael and, oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Michael and Danny.
Michael and Danny. Mike's 19 and a half and Danny's 15
All right,
hours.
you have, you don't need anything else as far as like shirts for him and clothing?
I did put a slight increase in for clothing. Clothing did go up for $250, but I was able to buy some in this budget. Last budget, I put in a little more to get prepared for that. So I think right now the clothing should be sufficient. And then we'll see what happens this year. I'm pretty much all set for uniforms, so if we need to expand on that next year, we'll take a look at it. I think we're in pretty good shape.
I just have, when you're referring to them as 15 and 16.
Hours.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That's not how old.
I was like, are they explorers? Okay, thank you.
Anthony, I'm not going to ask you about Sally's. I know you did the, but,
That's out of my hands.
but I am going to ask you about new businesses. So I know we've had a couple, well, we've had many come in lately, but on Old Weathersfield, it just started, and I hear great things about you. How long is that inspections, are those taking? Is everything moving kind of cleanly through some of those new businesses?
Actually, new properties or new buildings are easier to work on or work with. When you have these renovations, people changing from one occupancy to another, even the people in the field, the architects and engineers don't have a good handle on it. So there's a lot of meetings, a lot of going back and forth with plan reviews and things like that. I mean, ultimately, you know, the building has to meet the code. So there's some built-in challenges with that. And that takes a lot of time. So that primarily, I take care of all the plan reviews and all the new constructions or renovations, and my inspectors do more of the routine work. But again, it's very time consuming. You know, business is a lot more difficult to deal with. I'm not saying the business is, but just getting buildings built, because now there's developers involved, there's contractors. When I first started the operation back in the 80s, it was a lot smoother. You know, a lot of times a developer will hire an architect and doesn't even want to listen to his architect because he thinks his architect's making him do something he's not supposed to do. So then they try to cut corners, it comes to me, and I have to go back and agree with the architect, because the architect is the one that knows the code. So there's a lot of back and forth, so there's a lot of meetings I go to
You're a busy
to
guy.
address this. I mean, you know, we're following the lead, Fred's lead here. We're trying to get business in here and trying to, but at the end of the day, it's got to be safe. So sometimes there's some hurdles. I'm sure you hear some bad things about me too, but it's just, I have to do, enforcement's not easy anymore. It was a lot easier years ago.
I don't hear bad things about you. I know enforcement is an important issue, and I know safety is the number one issue. We want to be as business-friendly as we can be, but we need to be safe.
I just think though, the misleading thing, a lot of folks that decide, and maybe, they're just not aware of it. A lot of people think like we make them do that. It's the same code in all 169 towns here in the state of Connecticut. So if you're building in Weathersfield, you're doing it the same way in Newington, in Bridgeport, in East Hartford, wherever. So that educational part takes a lot of time, consumes a lot of time for me to explain this to people.
Well, I'm glad we got the extra half-time inspector, and it seems like that is helping and kind of evening out the workload a little bit.
Yeah, because for a while there, when we were shorthanded, you know, I had to spend a lot of time here doing more administrative stuff or going to a lot of meetings, and the inspections were falling behind.
Well,
So now that they have two guys that can count on to sit out in the field all week, they're getting all the routine inspections done. And it pays dividends. I mean, I really can't produce a report that shows it, but of the majority, probably about 90% of when we do have real fires, they're either in single-family homes or they're vehicle fires on the highway, things like that. Our commercial fire loss is extremely low, which means two things. People are taking care of their buildings, and also the code enforcement's helping, because we go in there to make sure they're servicing their sprinkler systems, exits are clear, preventing fires, electrical fires, things like that. So I like to think our efforts are helping keeping the fire load down here in the community, and we do it for the firefighters as well. The less fires, obviously, that keeps them out of danger.
No doubt. Well, all your work is appreciated very much, Anthony. If there's no further questions, then we'll move on to Chief and Fire Suspension. Thank you, Anthony.
You're welcome.
Chief, you're up.
Chief, you gotta speak right into that microphone because it
You
doesn't.
might want to move it over, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Town Manager, fellow council people. As you're aware, we are 221 years old. Thanks for plug. We are currently sitting about 52 members. We have had more, we have had less. In the past couple of years, we've had some hills and we had some valleys. We had people that come in, some people that left. Right now, we currently have one in the pipeline for new membership. As the mayor is aware, that I've started a social media committee this year. That I have a couple members that are very social media gurus, a lot better than I am, that are starting to put together some things for social media to get our recruitment and our word out there that we're looking for members constantly. There has been some good stuff on the Facebook lately. We've been working in conjunction with people in high school, EDIC, and the Chamber of Commerce to get our word out. So in the future, they're in the process of putting together a PSA type commercial, and over a period of a couple months, probably like little bits. And I never.
I hope you're going to star in that commercial, Chief.
Yeah, I'm going to be right on that, yep. You betcha. But anything will help. So we're trying different things to overcome the issue that's nationwide. So I'll turn it over now to my proposed budget. The biggest increase you'll see in my proposed budget is our point incentive category. I've added $130,000 to that category, and I have a whole narrative here that I could read through.
Salaries and wages, Brian?
Salaries and wages, yes. It's, yes, first line, top volunteer. And so volunteer and officer incentive program, the intent is we're sitting at $9 a point right now compared to all of our surrounding towns that are anywhere from 17 to 20. The point incentive program was started back in the late 2000s. Since its inception, there's been little increase, approximately $3 since the inception. The program started about $6 a point. Last increase was probably approximately 5 years ago, and that was $1, bringing it up to the current of $9 a point.
Brian, do you want to just explain what a point is?
Okay, a point is if we have a call for service, everybody that responds gets a point for an hour period of time. So as it is now, you get 1 point for the first call. If it goes over 2 hours, you get a second point, so you're actually getting $18. If it goes a third hour, you get another point. What we're proposing to do now is make the point worth $17 a point. You also get a point for 2 hours of training, which is mandatory training. We get points for fire prevention. We get points for meetings. We get points for training. So every hour is a point. Now, if this goes through, we're going to make some adjustments to that point, that hour time frame, especially for calls. As we found out, most of our calls are less than an hour, so you would get a point. But if it goes for that other extra hour, you'll still get that 1 point. So basically, for 2 hour call, you're still going to get 17. You're getting 1 point for $17. In October 2022, with a few days after my appointment as chief, a consultant that was hired by the sitting council at the time visited and surveyed our department. One of their findings was that we, as a department, were lagging behind our surrounding communities in the point and incentive program, a program that we developed as a program and a program that other communities built off of. They documented the differences in the surrounding communities, and it was reflected in their report, which I have that part of that report right there. Late last year, we established, with Assistant Chief Dignati's supervision, a compensation committee who sought out what the surrounding communities have for incentive programs. The committee found 4 major areas that the department was lagging behind. One is our per point value is approximately $10 to $15 behind the towns of Rocky Hill and Newington. In our program, captains and above chief officers were not included in the point system. Rocky Hill, Newington, Glastonbury, they are all included. We are not sure why this was never put in place, and our intention now is to include those. As it stands right now, Weathersfield is $9 per point. Rocky Hill is $17 per point, with their proposal this year to go to $20. Newington starts at $17 per point for a firefighter and has increasing sliding scales as the officer level increases. So up to about 20 to 22 to $24 a point as you get higher in rank. Rocky Hill and Newington provides $2,000 tax abatement to eligible members. Weathersfield is still $1,000. Glastonbury is proposing to go to approximately $25 per point this year. With our requested increase of $130,000, the point incentive program, it is our plan to bring this department in line with other surrounding communities by, number one, increasing our point value from $9 per point to $17 per point, and to include the chiefs and captains in the point system, keeping them in line with other communities. As we discussed the point and revision, we considered an average amount of responses we have done recently and the approximate number of responders, and the addition of the captains and chief officers, and came up with an estimate of $130,000. While nobody has a crystal ball as to see what the future calls for service, what will look like in the next fiscal year. Of course, this is all driven by amount of calls and amount of responders. The incentive program is a tool in our recruitment and retention toolbox and will help enhance our personnel to continue to roll out as our calls for service increase, protecting our community. What was the record last year? Amount of calls?
680.
680 calls for service last year. Another area that we will look to be revising in next year is our tax abatement program. Weathersfield spearheaded the initial tax abatement program for the Volunteer Fire Service back in the 1980s. And with the support of our legislative delegation, past legislation allowed this program. So the initial legislation was, I believe, $1,000, and throughout the years, the legislation has increased the amount to $2,000. Currently, Rocky Hill and Newington give a $2,000 tax abatement for their members who meet the criteria, and here in Weathersfield has never been increased since the program started. Of course, we are understanding to our community's needs and budget increases, but I'll look at this. 100% of our members live in town. We provide invaluable service when we're called for, and any incentive to keep them to continue to roll out when called is a win-win. I would be remiss to say that I would bet that approximately 70-80% of any incentive that is given to our members finds its way back into the community by the way of a local coffee shop, lunch at a local restaurant, gas from a local gas station, or shopping in a local store. So that's my spiel on the increase in our point incentive program. Any questions of that? If you look at the rest of my budget, the only other increase that I was looking for this
I can
year
do it now.
is $1,000.
Chief, Councilor
Sorry.
Clancy
Since
had
you
a question.
asked, I'm just curious.
Cindy, bring your mic down
Oh,
so
sorry
the
about
people
that.
at home.
Yeah, since you asked, I'm just curious how, I assume the point system doesn't at all interfere with you being a volunteer, your volunteer status.
No, with
So
the
could you
point system,
Explain why?
yeah, it's a fine line, because with the point system, you're technically not getting paid, you're given a point. So if we paid a person a salary, then you can't expect them to volunteer or do anything after hours without paying them their salary because of the Fair Labor Standards Act. That's part of it. Or if you give them a salary and they go over a certain percentage of a, and how do they say it? 20% of a average career firefighter salary in the area, that you're not considered a volunteer. So this has been working throughout the United States everywhere, this point system, and that's why we continue to use it.
Thanks.
Is hourly rate the career guy's hourly rate, or his salary as a whole?
Yes, yeah.
Well, his average yearly, the average
I'm sorry.
yearly salary, so it'd be 20% of that, you can't go over that.
But they don't say the salary of the Hartford fire guy. It could be Hebron, it could be West Hartford.
Yeah.
Big difference. So it's not a retirement
works.
moneymaker, but it's
It
enough for
works.
people to put gas in their cars, to buy new clothes that they ruined, going to fire calls, things like that. So, any other questions about the point system or the increase?
about the point system? No. You have more to talk about on your budget?
Yep, I have, my other increase is $1,000 in the recruitment account. I think everything else is stable, and I have to credit the state highway funds that we receive, as all of our personal protective equipment is increasing every year, and the money that we receive for responding to fire calls on the highway or incidents on the highway has been so far able to cover the increased costs that we've had in our personal protective equipment in the last year. Unfortunately, last year was pretty fluid. This year, I think we've been up to the highway 3 times. By this time last year, we were probably up there 10, 12. So that's all actually call-driven, so last year we did well, and we bought some new equipment and replaced a bunch of hose, and that was all paid for by the limited access highway funds. So if that dries up and goes away and they decide not to fund that, then I'll be back here next year looking for severe increases in those areas.
That fund didn't dry up?
What's that?
It didn't dry up with the
No.
state?
Nope, they restarted it about 2 years ago, and it's been funded again last fiscal years, which would bring us till next year. They fund about $3 million, and it only goes to volunteer fire departments to respond to that way.
Can you comment on the CIP, Chief, building 1? And
I came across this year not having really anything that went over the criteria of the 25,000. We're in good shape building-wise. Grounds-wise, that falls under usually engineering physical services, like parking lots and things like that, so I know that they're covered there. I have an air conditioning unit problem at Company 1, which is going to be a substantial amount of money, but nobody can tell me really how much yet. They're looking for quotes, but that falls under the criteria of the 25,000.
Well, not that, Chief, but in our notes, it is $1 million Fire Station 1 building expansion.
That has been in there for quite a few years.
Okay.
We do need to look for the future for expansion. And right now, the only opportunity right now for us to expand is really Company 1, because we're really landlocked in the other firehouses. That has been in out years in the CIP schedule for probably a dozen years, 10 years. So it just got carried over.
So the main driver of this budget is the increase in the point system and the pay for that.
And once I get into CNEF, you'll see there's a new fire truck in CNEF.
Yeah.
So the operating budget, the only 2 increases, the $1,000 in recruitment retention and $130,000 for the point system. Other than that, any other increases or decreases are either FICA or workers' comp, not controlled by me.
Got it. Any other questions? Councilor Bailey, Councilor Clancy?
Wait, he's not done.
No, but that's,
Okay,
you
not
can do,
yet, no.
yeah, good.
All right, that's operating. And now as I go along to CNF vehicle requests, this is my second year requesting a replacement for the command vehicle on Company 1. The command vehicle right now is about 130,000 miles. It's continuously falling apart. 2 weeks ago, it was towed back from the fire academy as our students were up there in their class. It broke down as they got there. It broke down last week. There's just a lot of expenses that are starting to go into it, that it's not a reliable emergency vehicle anymore. The vehicle is used by some of our staff members when they need to. It's used by our people for going back and forth to the training academy. It's used by the Fire Marshal's office during the day, since he doesn't have a vehicle. It's just in constant use. So the request was put in last year. It got cut under the CNEF decrease last year. At the end of the year, was put back in for the end of the year funds, and the package of that funds got reallocated to other areas of the town. So I'm back here again this year looking for replacement of $70,000 for a replacement of the command vehicle. The new vehicle will go to myself, and the other 2 vehicles that we have would be passed down, so the oldest of the 2 chief's vehicles would end up being the new command vehicle. The price that I've gotten is off the state bid list. The possible problem I might have is finding inventory right now because of the way the model years go and the way they come out. And last year, between last year's model year and this year's model year, the price increased $10,000. So that's my first CNF request. My second CNF request for vehicles is a replacement of Utility 17 down at Company 1. That is a 1999 Ford pickup truck with a utility body. The current pickup truck is starting to show signs of rot between the existing body and the frame rails and other areas of the interior of the body. The vehicle currently carries all of our cellular equipment, our ice rescue equipment, our air packs, some of our air packs, and it's a main towing vehicle for our marine unit, our boat, back and forth to the cove, back and forth to the storage area, firehouse to the cove when it needs to be. So that request is approximately $85,000 for what we have now. And the next one is our replacement of our Truck 32, which is a 1997 100-foot aerial ladder. The approximate cost for that is $2.3 million. Like I say, it's now 27 years old. This is one of the last 3 dirty engines that is left in our fleet. A dirty diesel engine has been manufactured previous to any substantial emission standards. Thus, there's no catalytic converters, there's no particulate burn-off systems for the exhaust systems, thus releasing dirty exhaust into the atmosphere. There's components to this apparatus that are hard to be found and not supported anymore. Alternators, load management systems, electronics that came out, that's where state-of-the-art in 1997. Some of those are not supported anymore. The lag time of ordering a new piece of equipment and have it received for this type of tower ladder, it's about 28 months from the day you sign a contract. So that will put us, this vehicle would approximately be 30 years old by the time it would be replaced, or would be, a new vehicle would be here. That's 5 years over the recommended standard of 25 years by the NFPA. And the longer that we put off some of these purchases, we're looking for probably 16 to 20% increases every year. Failure to maintain and comply with the standards of ISO could have a direct increase or decrease of our insurance rating, which gets passed along to the insurance rates of our community. So if we lose ISO 3 rating, which we have, and go down to a 4, then that affects our commercial and residential property insurance rates. So that's my third request for CNEF this year. And our last major purchases for apparatus was around 2018-ish. Those vehicles came in, 2 pumpers came in 2020, and that was our last time we had a major purchase. Comparing of what's happening in the rest of the community around us, Berlin has just received 2 pumpers as of last week that they've purchased. Newington in the past couple of years has replaced a tower ladder, heavy rescue, and a pumper. Has 1 pumper currently being built or in the system, and that's about 3 years down the road. And they're in the planning stages of another rescue truck and another ladder truck. Glastonbury has 2 rescue pumpers on the assembly line right now. Rocky Hill's last purchase was 6 major apparatus at one time, back about 6-8 years ago, maybe. Hartford, 4 pumpers, 2 ladder trucks delivered in the last year. Colchester just took a delivery of 3 pumpers, 1 ladder, and a tanker pumpers on the assembly line. Southington, just a brand new 100-foot tower just came in. As I stated before, if we end up signing a contract anytime soon, probably 3 years average before that new vehicle would get here. And that's the overview of my budget and vehicle request for the year, this year.
Thank you, Chief.
Any questions?
Questions for the Chief?
Questions?
Chief,
Council Clancy.
Chief, are you familiar with, well, I guess they refer to them as Vision Zero fire trucks?
Not really. So tell
And
me.
maybe the Vision Zero part you don't know.
Well, I know,
They're-
maybe not, but I might notice something else. but-
Yeah, they're shorter and narrower, and they have a smaller turning radius. They're considered to be safer for roads that are being narrowed, like the
Okay.
plan is to narrow the Saladin. So I'm wondering if that's something you've looked at.
Well, we look at building a piece of fire apparatus that will fit the needs of our community. We still have to carry water, we still have to carry hose, we still have to carry a certain amount of equipment, and some of our vehicles are multi-use vehicles. So, no, I haven't heard about it, but I will look into it.
Yeah, they're made by a company, I think it's called Farrar. I actually have some articles I could give you.
Yep.
But I wonder if you could look at that and see if, before we get to even talking about the CNAF stuff later, if they have one and if you'd be interested in it, or you could tell us what's good or bad about the whole idea. That
I
would
know
be
the
great.
reputation of Ferrara, but I don't think it's good public comment to say.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well,
I'd like to
City
hear
of
about
Hartford-
it, maybe not right now, but,
City of Hartford at one time used them, and they had so many problems with them, they stopped buying them. They're a lower quality, not long-term type fire truck. So it's a lower quality fire truck.
well, a lot of big
So
cities
we're-
have gone to, I mean, San Francisco just bought a bunch of them.
Sure.
And they're saying there's actually safer for the firefighters inside, that the cabs are made safer for people.
And
And that
you're-
they could make their way around, like we had that problem when they added the rotary thing that was down at the end of Main Street, that it wouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking, looking toward the future, that might be something that we want to consider.
Yep. You know, a lot of those towns, they replace them 10 or 15 years too, because they break down. I'm not being negative about.
No, I know. I'm just hoping you
Look,
could
I know that.
look into it and let
I'll
us
look into
know.
it, absolutely.
Thank you.
Cindy, I gotta guess that that's an engine they're talking about.
They make all
They call them city engine, we call them city engines. They're a little shorter, the two we bought are considered
yeah,
city.
they're 10 feet shorter, apparently, yeah.
No.
And a little
10
narrower,
feet?
depending on which ones you're looking at.
Right.
Yeah, these are engines, not ladder trucks, No. that you're speaking of, and I'm not being critical, it's just different.
No,
They're
but they
different.
make all the different, they make ladders, they make pumpers, they do make, they have like 6 different kinds of things.
Okay.
I'll look at it. I'll look at it.
No, I'm done, I said my thing.
Oh, I could talk to them all night, we're good.
Just a question, I think I know the answer, but I want to ask it anyway. Is there, when you're looking for these new vehicles, do we have to get new? Is there a used marketplace? You know, the prices are pretty high, and I know the need is high, but is there potentially a marketplace where there may be a 5 to 7 year old truck that may be less money but in great condition? Is there, and I don't know the answer, is there a market out there that sells used trucks that we could look into potentially?
There is, but buying anything used, you're buying somebody else's problem. And if you have a used fire truck out there that's only 5 years old, then it's probably something that somebody else got rid of because they had issues with it. I wouldn't buy used police cars, and I wouldn't buy used soccer balls for the park and rec. It's just, it's a safety vehicle that saved lives. And buying somebody else's problems, I couldn't support
I
it.
would assume they would be certified in some manner that they have
Some
all the
of them might
safety
be.
equipment and,
Some of them might be,
okay,
but some of them might be cheap because they can't be.
okay.
But yes, there are dealers out there.
In your opinion, that wouldn't be of value, even, obviously it would be cheaper than a new one, but it wouldn't be of value and there's some risk in that, if I hear you.
I
Okay.
believe there's risk in it because if you're buying a fire truck that's only 3 or 4 years old off of a used car salesman, there's usually something, there's got to be a reason why the town got rid of it, or another municipality got rid of it. And just remember, we're buying vehicles here for 25 years, 25 years. They may be now pushing it on to 30 years. So we're looking for something with quality, something that's built rugged, something that's not going to be, we consider them throwaway fire trucks, that you can buy out of a catalog, but you're going to throw it away in 5, 6, 7, 8 years because it's a lesser quality.
Understood, that makes sense.
And that's, I mean, the number of 2.3 might be a little high. What we're dealing right now, with right now is the emission standards are changing. So in order for the manufacturers to hold some prices, they're going a little high because they don't know what they have to do to modify their vehicles once the engines meet the new standards. Because, they buy an engine from Cummins. Cummins has to meet the new EPA standard. They don't know what it's going to take to adjust that new motor or exhaust system or everything in their vehicles. So they can't definitely say how much it's going to cost.
But the estimate is 2.3 million?
2.3, might be a little high.
Yeah.
But
It
I'm
is
not going
high.
to say it's not. Well, if you prolong, it is high. I mean, I understand it's high, but you're looking at a piece of machine that's going to last 25 years. It's transports us. It's the safest thing that's out there and the newest. And I have a couple flyers here that fire apparatus went up since 2011, 103%, like anything else.
Who makes the one you want?
I'm sorry?
Who makes the one that you want?
Suffolk Corporation. It would be a newer version, basically what we have now. All of our fleet is Suffolk except for one rescue truck. So that's who would we go for. Replace with like such vehicle, standardization.
Anything else? Chief, I think we're good. I appreciate all that you and the men and women of the fire department do for us. Thank you. I think we have elections next, but I think is it 5:45 or?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Engineering's next.
So engineering next, okay. I think they changed it around, because the one we got tonight, engineering was supposed to be next, but the thing we got tonight
Oh, all
says
right.
election.
Okay.
It did say the
Well,
original.
they're not very far away.
Yeah, no, they're,
What does say elections next? Engineering's last. Who's the salesman now? Right.
Jim Lyons, bald-headed guy. I think he went out with you guys last time after Pat left.
Can I not remember him?
He's from Glastonbury. Lived in Glastonbury, Pat.
They weren't
Jim
drinking
Lyons,
really, so.
big tall guy, bald head.
That was good.
We don't have everyone, so.
Now he's on a hemp farm.
Yeah, this is a good point.
He's a farmer.
Loving life for what I can remember of it.
More folks are coming.
He's a farmer.
This
And we have to get up by 7.
This conversation went down.
Chief? Chief?
Oh,
Yeah, Chief, these are for you, for your reading pleasure. Thanks. Trade you.
Trade.
great.
Here's his color. Nice.
Sorry I didn't make more this afternoon, but that's just.
We can share.
Apparatus.
Cindy will tell us, Counselor Clancy will let you know.
Yeah, I'm up on my fire truck.
Fighting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Have a good night. You hear the elections.
What's the Katori?
Come on down. Elections in the house.
Hello, Carol and Maria. Yes,
Yes.
and when you talk, bring the microphone close to you and.
Hold it?
No,
just-
no.
Oh, I can
no.
just-
So if and if
Okay,
we-
got it.
So we have, we don't have a quorum, but we still are going forward, and we have, I think, Counselor Carbone, Deputy Mayor Forrest, and Counselor Zambrello on their way, but we want to get started, and we've been going through the other presentations.
And they're all being recorded so they can watch them all later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, welcome Elections Department, and you guys are up, so you can go. Tell us about your budget.
You got it.
And Maria, if you're going first, take the mic over to you.
Okay, so typically we have a pretty small budget, but you're going to see that this year's is definitely larger than we've ever had before, and that is two things. One, early voting. The state's never had it until this past presidential preference primary. And also, it's a presidential election year, so we are full force. with everything we have to do. We have, if there's a primary in August, we're gonna have 7 extra days of early voting and the costs associated with the primary. And for the November election, there'll be 14 days of early voting. And of those, 4 are weekend days, and 2 are days that run from 8 to 8. So the staff costs we're gonna have for that are gonna be substantial, because we have to staff all hours of the early voting. So that's really the biggest increase you're gonna see on us, is the personnel increase. And it just breaks it down here, the 14 days general, 7 days primary, all of the absentee ballot workers as well. For the November election, there'll be same-day registration as well, so we have to staff that. We have some training costs in here as well for moderators, ballot costs, which will increase because for the early voting, we don't use the exact same ballot that we use in the polls. We may be able to, but we need to just wait until we get closer and see what will be the most cost-effective way to go about it. For this past presidential preference primary, we used a ballot that was coded the same as the absentee ballots, not as the poll ballots. So that's one thing we'll have to wait and see on that. Some additional supplies. As you know, we've gotten a $10,000 grant from the state. That's part of the prior fiscal year's budget. And we're trying to use up all of that by buying 3 laptops, some scanners, and label makers, so that those won't be costs that the town has to incur. We're gonna try to get all those costs for additional equipment taken up with the grant. And as far as unknown goes, the state is in the process of agreeing to new optical scanners for the ballots that, the polling locations that the ballots feed into, that scan and count the ballots. And we do not know what the cost will be or how much the state will be picking up of that cost. So,
It was funded.
was it?
Yes.
Okay, so
Pretty
it
sure
may
that's
not be a
the
cost to the town, but we have to wait and see. We don't know if the equipment will fit in our current cabinets that we roll out to each of the polling locations. So we do have some unknowns, but again, our biggest increase really has to do with early voting, in summary.
Yeah, personnel has always been our biggest
Carol,
cost.
can you take the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Personnel has always been our biggest cost, just even at the general polls during the election. And now, of course, we've got all those extra days, and it's looking like we're going to have to staff it pretty much like a poll. We went pretty much, we were like sort of a skeleton crew for the presidential preference primary, because you know, we did think it was going to be a big turnout, which it wasn't, but obviously that won't be the case in November, so we're going to have to really prepare a large staff for those 14 days, which is really difficult, because I do have a lot of trouble just hiring for the regular elections. I probably lost 8 people a week before this past primary due to various reasons, and you know, so I'm always scrambling, and I literally started hiring people for April in November of last year. I asked my people when they train, can you work the next one? I'm already looking ahead, because that's how time consuming it is. So I was working on staffing for that many months and still came up short at the end, and that was a much smaller crew due to some differences with the presidential preference primary and how we have to staff it. But that will not be the case in August, as far as, you know, a bare minimum crew. The statute does not allow for that. And also in November will be a big crew. So a big increase in all that. And of course, you know, we have memory cards that run our scanners, so we'll have more of those for early voting. Then we have the EV, you know, so all this is going to add up to a lot of extra stuff. Which then comes down to our salaries, which we didn't get a raise for 6.5 years. And we got one last year based on basically all the extra work we've been given over the years. My job does not resemble anything. I started in 2009, and it is nothing like that job. There was minimal online, there was not monthly canvassing, there wasn't early voting, there wasn't election day registration, and all the things that we are required to do. There wasn't certification programs. This time around, I mean, we've had constant Zoom meetings in preparation for this presidential preference primary, a lot of training, conferences. So we spend a lot more time and hours on this job than I did back in 2009 when I started. And obviously, this year, we're going to have 21 plus the 4 days that we had extra, and that's working, beyond the normal working hours. We have 2 full weekends we'll be working, but that not only is just those hours that you see that we're working, there is many, many hours for prep to put into that in November. We're working on staffing and starting for November now, because it's going to be obviously a big event. A presidential or gubernatorial is always a big event, and so we want to be prepared. But we don't feel that our salaries have kept up with other towns. Not all towns. Some towns don't pay as well as others, but people are leaving in droves. 2 registrars left last week. They hired new ones. They worked the presidential preference primary, and then they said, I'm done. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of hours. It's a big commitment, and, I feel like it's an important job, and obviously, I'm assuming everyone feels like this is an important job, but I don't feel like it's necessarily been reflected in our pay over the years. And as I said, our hours have increased a lot and continue to do so year after year after year. So, and we also want to pay our poll workers more, because it's harder and harder to get poll workers. And, I want to make it more attractive to people. I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. I know what I said. We did a big increase for we asked for a fairly large increase for the assistant registrars, or the deputies, I should say, because the turnover is a lot. And there is a lot of years of training to go into when you are training a deputy. You don't learn this job overnight. There are many, many, many things to learn on this job. The laws, just all the procedures, and to have a turnover, every couple of years, it's tough. It's tough on us because we pick up the slack. So then we're working even more hours. So I would really like to retain, current staff. We do have a deputy actively searching for a job right now. So I would like to make the job a little more attractive to future candidates, because basically we tell people, yes, you're going to work 12 hours a week, but then you're at our beck and call 24/7 for 3 months if we need you. So that's a job description is not a great job description. So we want to compensate them, because, though they may not work a lot of hours, maybe March and April not typically this year, but on another year, when we need them, we need them. We need them in August, September, and October, 3 to 5 days a week, long hours, and, that's a hard sell, especially if people have other activities or jobs in their life. So we do want to make that more attractive. So that's why I asked for the increase for the deputies, because I would love to retain the deputies that we have, because it makes our life so much easier, because to continually train people, obviously, is not easy. And if we lose a deputy this year, it's going to be really, really tough. We're going to be training for a lot of stuff. The centralized voter system is changing this year that we use. That's been in place for many, many years, so that's something else we need to learn. Then, of course, there'll be the new scanners, all the new laws. I mean, it's great if you have a team that stays together, at least for a decent amount of years for the amount invested in training your staff. Do you have anything to add to that?
If I could add something to that, I just want to say that, and Fred, you probably know this, our jobs don't really have a job description, and neither do our deputies, but I think if we were to write down everything our deputies do and try to align it with another position within town hall, you'll find that we do require a really skilled worker. There's a really high level of discretion with what they do. They just really need to, be a worker that might, I don't know how the clerk ones line up, but like a clerk 2 or a clerk 3. And we're just asking that our deputies be paid in line with what their skill set would be paid for the town. And currently, they're not, and which is unfortunate because both of our deputies are really excellent at what they do, and we'd like to keep them. So I don't know if, how we can go about this, but we really do need to do something about their pay. Their pay is kind of like, my daughter babysits and makes more money per hour than what they make. So we need to make a change here.
Anything else, Maria or Carol? Well, thank you both.
This came out, I believe, in the fall, I'm not 100% sure, Town Leader News, and I did send
Yes.
Ken, should I call you Mayor Lesser? I'm not sure.
It's either is fine, it's fine.
This publication, and the Secretary of State did in fact say, important thing to understand is that is often misunderstood is that with the advent of early voting, the job of the registrar is changing significantly. For towns with only part-time election officials, the number of hours is greatly increasing. Early voting bears no resemblance to what we're used to with election day. Not only will we require new training, I'm just really skimming this, new procedures, new centralized voter system, create plans for SOTS approval, Secretary of State's office, SOTS, I'm not sure if you're aware of that, and a much higher mastery of knowledge and know-how, including database work. So she basically sent this out to all the town leaders. So, I just want to highlight that, she is stepping up to the plate and saying, yes, there is a need for increase in money for our jobs, and our jobs are not the same. They're just not even close to what we used to do.
Well, thank you both.
I have one more thing.
Yeah, sure.
Shameless plug. So this is recorded, and people are watching this potentially. If you want to work the election in the fall, please come see us. The application is online. It's a 15-hour day, but, it's kind of like a community service, like Give Back. We do pay, and we could use
We
all...
have 3 retired counselors right
Yeah,
here.
retired counselors are
Myself.
welcome. If you're not on the ballot, come on down.
I'm just kidding.
So,
I'm just kidding.
Tired yet.
we would appreciate
Why don't we
any
retire
and
from
all
the council?
workers.
I don't know. Yes.
Yeah, I do want to point out that actually Cindy has taken the moderator's course, so she can work.
One would hope, yes.
Thank you, Maria and Carol, and just to catch up,
I have a question.
I'm going to just catch up.
Oh, okay.
Councilor Zambrello and
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Force, we're happy you're here. We just had the elections group, the registrars, give an overview of their budget, and we're just to go into questions on their budget. You know where to find your black tab, and then in your blue tab, it's C34. And while you're putting those together, thank you both for making it. Cindy, Council Clancy.
Sure. So I see we're paying rent on 2 different polling places. And
The churches,
yeah,
yes.
as you know, the Historical Society has twice offered the Keeney Center for free on Election Day.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering why we're not following up on that.
Well, number one, I had asked about that location for many, many years, and we still had to pay. And then when we changed the polling place, it was a mass mailing of sending some, information out to every single person at that poll. And it took a couple of years to, not have the confusion that the poll was still there. So now everyone's kind of used to that poll. That is not one of the polls that we pay for where they are voting, but it's a big undertaking. I mean, we have to send it out, then people get confused, well, why are we here? Are we going to stay here? And that was, after the change. I mean, we've been asking for years if we didn't have to pay, and then when we made the change, they're like, oh, yeah, you don't have to pay now. So, I mean, not sure why that didn't happen earlier, seeing that it's a town property. I didn't feel like we should be paid. That was the most we paid for any polling place.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point. Of all the places we had been paying, that was the third one. It was almost double what we were paying for each of the churches.
And we had quite a few complaints about the elevator, having to walk in the back door and getting in the elevator, where all our polls are basically you walk in and there's the polling place. That was the only polling place where you couldn't just walk in the polling place is right there. You have to, park in the back, walk down the hallway, get in the elevator. People didn't love the elevator too. That was another thing. People felt like it was old and unsafe. So I haven't personally received any complaints about that. As any time you change polls, which we also did in 2012, we went from 10 polls to 6 polls. There was some confusion and, but once people got used to it, it was fine. So, it was in line with, just what was going on at the time. And, I don't know what to tell you other than that it was after the fact. It would have been great if they offered that beforehand, but like I said, there were issues with people getting in and out of the poll. If you're 90 years old and you have to walk all the way down that hallway, get into the elevator, and then and then you're getting off the elevator right there, whereas, if you walk into Emerson, it's right there. If you walk into Webb, if you're elderly, there's a handicap parking lot. You walk right into the building. You walk right into Incarnation. You walk right into the Methodist. The community center, same thing. So, I think access was also an issue, aside from paying for the, that being the highest rent. And it had been discussed, as I said, for many years about why are we paying rent for a town facility, and it was never addressed. So, I mean, it was late in the game, too.
Well, the reason I ask is I think that was really one of the biggest comments when I was knocking door to door during the campaign, and primarily in Old Westville, because that's where all those voters are.
Right.
But that was the thing that a lot of people were concerned about and wanted to have brought back. They now have a new elevator. They've installed a new elevator.
Well, aside from the elevator, it's a hike if you're parking and walking into the location. And, we do have a larger elderly population, and we do get complaints about access. We used to get them about Webb because people weren't aware of the smaller lot on the opposite side of the building, which we've put up tons of signs and, really promoted that parking lot for people who have mobility issues. But, as far as my office is concerned, I haven't heard anything. I mean, certainly probably wouldn't be the year to make that change right now during a presidential year when we're like, we have a new system coming the end of May. We possibly have a primary in August, trying to hire lots of people. We have constant meetings at Zoom and otherwise, about updates on early voting. So we're pretty busy at this point, and to switch everyone back at this time would probably not be a good idea. And it will confuse people. I'm at the polls in and out all day long, and I never heard someone come into two saying, I hate voting here. It's terrible. They park, it's a direct shot. You walk right in and you vote, and it's easy access. It's not to say we wouldn't revisit it, but I don't think this is the year to do it.
Councilor Clancy, you still have the floor?
No, I'm done.
You okay? Yep. Further, Deputy Mayor Forrest.
Would you be amenable to visit, obviously maybe not for November, right? But would you be amenable to revisiting it for elections after November?
Yeah, I just said that I would revisit it.
That's what I thought you said, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you were clear about this one, but I didn't know about moving forward. Just of note, I not only, but being at the polling place too, which was at Pitkin, I heard exactly the same items of like.
From people coming from Old Weathersfield.
Yeah, or from District 2 in general, right? Which
Yeah.
I know is
Yeah.
basically Weathersfield. But they did comment all the time, like, we should be voting in our own district, why are we bringing it back, the whole bit. I will note, though, that the convenience of the Keeney Center in particular, now that we've resolved, any of the payment issues, which I agree with you about, by the way. I don't see it as any less convenient than like Emerson Williams, where you have to park out in the parking lot, and you gotta walk all the way across all those streets, and not those streets, but there's an egress, an entrance and egress on the side. You gotta walk all the way to the front, and you gotta go in the doors, and then you gotta get all the way to the polling place. So actually, I see District 2 as being actually more convenient in that respect than in particular, than Emerson Williams. There are other each polling place has its own unique, set of situations, of course. But I am interested in moving it back, and if that's something, how would we initiate that type of a change between the registrar's office and the town council for elections after November?
We would initiate that change. We would change the polling location, and then we would have to send out a mass mailing to all the people in that district that it has moved back.
And so how do we initiate that conversation with you about doing that change after November?
You can just ask us. I mean, I don't know how else we should just revisit it.
So if after, so at what point can we have that conversation with you for elections after?
Not right after November. That would not be a good time.
Okay, so when would it be a good time that this conversation can happen?
Yeah, in the beginning of the year.
So,
But I mean, it's, you are obviously seeing a different side. We saw a different side where we were getting complaints about access issues from our side. People weren't, they don't call us up and say, oh, we love voting here, it's awesome. But they let us know when they are not happy with, a location. Webb wasn't, like I said, Webb was another location that people were upset about. But then once we, made the signs very clear and really promoted the parking on the south side of the building and how you can just enter right there, then that issue went away.
Right.
But we did see, we did have complaints on our side about that poll and 2.
Yeah. So at the end of this year, beginning of next year, that would be the appropriate time to start that?
Not the end of this year. No.
Early next year.
Yeah.
In the
January
beginning of next year.
2025.
I mean, we are going to be
Appropriate.
swamped and working round the clock. So the last thing I'm going to want to do is discuss changing the polling location after a presidential election. In 2025, we can discuss it then. It'll be fine.
In January of 2025, or because I don't want to run into other elections where we've got all the.
No,
rest
that's
of
a
the
slow year. It's a municipal year.
Yeah.
We're not going to run into other elections, so it would be fine.
Okay.
Any other questions, Dave?
Just to be clear, it's not, once the decision is made, it's not a ton of work. We just have to do a mailing to let everybody know. So we just need to make the decision. Everybody agrees, commitment from the building that they're not going to charge us. And we do a mass mailing, we change a few things in the computer, and we're good to go.
Can I follow up on that?
And can we, but we could preemptively get that commitment from you this year for the building and say, look, they're not going to charge you, you guys are ready to go, that kind of thing?
You could, but are there other buildings in Old Weathersfield we should consider too? I'm just, it was two. Is Hamner an option? Is the other church building? I don't know, is that the best option? Is the best option having people need to ride an elevator up? I don't know.
Well, there are 2 staircases in addition to the elevator.
Yeah, I'm asking it more as like an honest question,
Yeah.
if we're gonna make a change, let's go through the process of making the right change.
Yeah, I understand. I think, a lot of it is that they would be voting in their own district. I think Hamner happens to not be in the second district at that time. So that was the municipal
Well,
building.
interestingly, a lot of Old Weathersfield does vote at the Pitkin already.
Yeah,
They're part
that's
of
6,
District
right, obviously.
6.
So,
It's,
thank you.
Anything else, Dave?
Nope.
but we are happy to discuss it.
Council Clancy, did you
Well,
have
just to follow up on that I was just wondering, what does it cost to send out a mailing? I mean, I see.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I
Well,
really
'cause I'm
don't.
just seeing the cost of.
I mean,
some of
I could
these-
look back at what it cost me to send out the initial.
Well, I'd just be curious, because if the rental cost on one of them is $600, if we're saving on that by sending out the letter, and you do
The
have,
rental cost,
in your budget, you're asking for $600 for one of the rentals for the day of Election Day.
right, but where two is now, there's no payment at the community center.
No, right, I'm just saying that that's the cost of one of the polling places. This one is free. And I know that you do have the commitment in writing, both you and the town manager have had that for a year, offering that for free. So obtaining that is not an issue.
Right, yeah, no, I received several emails from them.
Okay, that's all, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Clancy. Anybody else? Well, I'll just say, first off, thank you for all you do. Your work is really important and really valued. And I have a couple quick questions. So the presidential preference primary, because there was no real contests on both sides, I would say it was probably fairly light in the early voting, which is what my question is going to lead to. I assume we expect a significant amount in the presidential, but August, we may not have primaries. I know there's a budgeted amount here. We won't know, maybe for another few weeks to a month,
I think around the middle of June, we'll know.
middle of June. Okay.
Our
So,
petitions, I think, are due June 11th.
okay, all right. So that is still up in the air. But do you anticipate for August, if we do early voting again, like we did the presidential primary, it would be here, just here, like we did?
Correct.
Okay. And that cost, is that based on what, let me just get it right, 12,922? Is that based on the 4 days we had for the presidential plus 3 more days?
Yes, bigger,
I know it says 7 days, but
depending on who's running, the staff may be larger. The last presidential preference primary ran in conjunction with the August primary in 2020, and it was a local contest, Amy Bello and Paul Montaneri, so we probably had, it wasn't a huge turnout, but we had a higher turnout than usual. So it really depends on who is running in the primary. If it's people that nobody really knows, potentially it's like a nothing, there's very little turnout in August.
yeah, and my last question is, Carol, you were mentioning about what other towns pay, either through your office or the town manager's office. Can we get, like, our surrounding towns, what they are paying registrars as well as poll workers? Because I hear you that recruiting poll workers is very difficult and there's an increase. Can we get the surrounding town information?
Well, surrounding town isn't really, you need to do like towns because, because some towns,
Newington, no?
it's probably similar, yeah,
Wilmington, Simsbury,
yeah.
Well, that would be, yeah, if we can get
Yeah.
like towns that are in
population.
our area, general area of the state, yeah. So either through you or, I don't know, town manager, how we get those kind of.
Yeah, we have that information and we can update it. We provided it last year.
Yeah, can you provide it to the council?
But, obviously Bethel has the polling place in the office. It's like a one-horse town. So, that's what makes it difficult is because you have Hartford, that's a full-time job and,
I'd be curious more Newington.
Yeah, so we
maybe
definitely want to.
Simsbury. Rock Hill, I recognize the population is less, but they're a
Right.
neighboring town, yes. If you could get that for us, that would be
Sure.
good.
I just want to say, even with Newington, it's not apples to apples. In discussions that I've had with them, their registrars get the union raise every year. So whatever the town gives the union for an increase, the registrars automatically get without having to ask. So different towns just operate differently, so just know it won't be,
Understood. No, that's
apples to
helpful.
apples.
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else. Does anybody have anything else?
Sure.
Yeah.
Did the general statutes, do they define the job of the deputy? I know you were saying there's no job description. Is it in the statutes?
I mean, if there are descriptions, but they're very just
Miniature.
tiny little
Okay.
paragraphs, and they've never been updated. So the job has changed a lot.
Is it the same everywhere?
Excuse
I
me?
mean, is it the same from town to town?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
law that you have a deputy.
No, I mean, what the job description is?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Well, no, that's not true either. I mean, some registrars don't come in. They just, they come in on election day and the deputies run the office. So it's very hard to compare towns too because it varies so much from town to town, where, or they might have clerks that come in and do the majority of the work throughout the year. When I started this job, there was 2 registrars, 2 deputies, and 2 assistants. And when Camille and I took over, we no longer kept the assistants, and we also increased our workday. We added a workday to our schedule. And as time goes by, it's, as I said before, increasing responsibilities, more time. But it is really difficult to compare. I mean, a lot of towns have done like SurveyMonkey, like how much you make, but then, they work X amount of hours, and this town works this amount of hours. One town works 1 day a week. They come in. There are towns that come in once a month. So, we really kind of have to find those towns that align with our town. So, and we have done it. We did give information last year, right, I believe?
Yeah, I think you did
Yeah,
last year.
yeah.
You really have to break it down by hour. Like, when I was talking to the Rocky Hill guys, I'm like, how many hours do you work? And they said, oh, we work, 18 hours. I said, oh, you both work 18 hours? No, the office is open 18 hours, and they make about what we make, but they really work they each work like not quite 12 hours. So it's you can't even tell from their websites, like, who's doing what. So we can get you the information, but we need to, like, actually speak to registrars and get all the details and get it updated, because it's all over the place. And like Carol said, some registrars only come in on election day and their deputies do everything. Some towns don't have a deputy, and they have, like, what Melissa went to go do in Torrington or something. They have like a,
No, they have to have a deputy.
they have almost like a clerk run everything. And then for elections, the deputy and the registrar step in. So there's just.
Understood.
It's
Yeah, no,
really,
thank you
it's
for
wild.
yeah.
We would prefer that the state took control of it and made it all the same and made the pay kind of the same by population, maybe.
That probably would be a good idea.
We have talked to the Secretary of State at our conference a couple weeks ago about that, and their hands are tied. It's up to the town. And but they are leaving in droves. I mean, weekly, there are registrars and deputies resigning because of so many hours. I mean, we don't have other jobs, but a lot of other people do have other jobs. And so there is a mass exodus going on at this point, and I don't want that to continue. I don't want to continue to lose deputies because, we want everything for 3 months, or maybe in April we want this, or August we want this, but then the other days they're just in a couple of days. So it's very hard to sell that to somebody.
Understood.
Yeah.
And again, as I started, appreciate all that you do. If there's no further questions from the council, you guys are good. Thank you. If you can get us that additional information. Carol, Maria, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And Townwide Radio, you're up next. So thanks, Maria. Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
Set up and
Not enough to agree.
We can take it off the school budget.
You can take it out.
There you go. Yeah, you just go ahead and introduce yourself. I know who you are, but
good evening, my name is Robert Keller. I'm the Townwide Radio Manager. My cohort, John Eichner, is actually traveling down to New Orleans for Jazz Fest, so a little jealousy he's going to New Orleans.
Well, you can have him on one side of the radio and you on the other.
Yeah, there you go.
Jazz. and
Chat down there and have him play the music.
Bob, you might have got the better gig than you did
I
tonight.
think so. Retirement is good.
Rolling Stones and Foo Fighters are headlining, so.
Oh, Rolling Stones, okay.
I
Maybe a
hope
happy
those radios
camper
went a
then.
long way.
Don't reach Cromwell.
Go ahead, Bob.
All right, so this year's budget, we're asking for $688,566, which is a overall decrease from last year's request. We're just about 10% under, about 73,000 under what we asked for last year, and there's a couple reasons for that. We did have an increase in personnel, working more hours. It's not a wage increase, it's a hour increase of time being spent doing management of the radio system. And this is due to us redesigning some of the ways the radios are working, implementing the new radios for the fire department, and preparing for an upgrade of our system. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and plus we also are doing the upgrades for generators, HVAC systems, and some other stuff that we have on our docket as well. So increased our hours, so that's our increase of the personnel this year. Non-personnel, we're pretty much contractually locked into most of it, and then the other stuff's like our electricity bills and stuff like that, so that sort of stays pretty much solid with our increases. Like I explained on the first note for our summary on page C100 for anybody wanted to look, the salaries went up, increased about $8,000. We're asking for $56,000 just due to the amount of hours that we're working. And it's not a wage increase, wage is staying the same, it's just more hours. So, and this would be the same for the consultant. John was actually planning on being retired fully by now. With the upgrade going on, he's agreed to stay on for a little bit longer just to see this upgrade through. It'll be a very big help. He has all the information from our initial move over to Harris from Motorola. So that'll be a huge help for the town in transition. So we did increase our training, and the reason for increasing our training this year from 10,000 to 15,000 is we're bringing in Harris to teach us more of the technical aspect of fixing some of the radios. Our XL200 platform that we're moving most of the town to, along with the fire department move of the radios, their warranties are ending. So for us to send the radios out, it's a lot more expensive, and the lead time sometimes can be up to 6 to 7 weeks, and having radios gone that long is not a good thing. Some of the issues that we've been having is some of the back plates break, control knobs. We actually have Harris is going to be coming in and doing a mass swap out, so we don't have to keep sending those out. But the back plates break a lot, and that's where one of the speakers is for the radio, so it sort of makes the radio no good to use. And with a 6-week lead time, when you're sending 5 radios out in a month, that's not a good thing. So that training class that we're bringing in is going to be for the technical servicing of the radios, so we can actually do it in-house. And it's going to save us packaging and everything in time, so that's a big help for the town. We're also going to be involving the city of Hartford with that. The reason being is city of Hartford is upgrading their radio system. It's a Harris radio system, same as ours, and we're trying to intermingle training and system components, so we don't have to buy all of them. Hartford can buy some, we can buy some, and go back and forth, and it's a good regionalization of the radio system. We've already gone to one class provided by Hartford, so this time we're going to put on a class, and I think actually West Hartford's radio guy is going to be putting on a class as well, so we're all sort of mixed in together. So that was the increase for the training itself. The maintenance counts are contractual, so those are just every year they have the contractual commitment to increase. We did have a decrease in our software, the SUM software. Reason being is our system is no longer able to take some of the SUM's upgrades, so we don't have to shell the money out right now until we do the upgrade. Once the upgrade is in place, we're actually trying to negotiate with Harris to give us a 5-year span of getting that for free again, like we did in the original inception of the radio program. And that'll save probably about $130,000 a year once we do the upgrade. As it sits right now, we're getting told by Harris there's been numerous cyber attacks on radio systems, which is fantastic. So they've implemented some things. We have been able to bring in the Harris tech. He's done some work to make our system safe, but we do need to push that upgrade as well. CMed contributions are on the same page. Shelters, we do rent the shelter to the city of Hartford now that we have up at the Kelleher Court site. We also have numerous other companies like AT&T, Verizon. We're getting Dish Network in as well up at that site. So we are making some money back for rental fees and things like that. Yes.
Sorry.
No.
You should finish first, right? We're gonna tell me there. I didn't know if you were done.
No, go ahead.
It looked like you were down at the CIP stuff, so.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Is that, I see on your CIP, which we were just talking about, we've got a radio shelter generator and a radio shelter HVAC.
Correct.
Is that the same radio shelter?
That's actually, we have 6 shelters in town.
Okay,
One of which is up on Executive Square,
sure,
2 behind the PD,
yeah,
2 at Kelleher Court, and 1 behind Callahan, the bowling alley of Bolorama.
yeah.
So we actually are putting in place a plan to replace all of them sequentially. So there's 2 redundant systems on each shelter for air conditioning and heating. So that would actually be for 1 shelter at a time. Right now, our current quote, I think the newest quote that we got for HVAC systems for replacing the 2 at the Kelleher Court site is $45,000. So
B is for Kelleher Court.
that is going to be for the Callahan site next. We're in the process. We had money already for Kelleher Court.
Okay, so B is for behind Bolorama.
Correct.
And that's
the
the
HVAC
40,000, was that for 2 shelters or 1 shelter?
That was for 2 shelters.
Okay, so you're,
So
so
we're
you're
going to do
asking
2
for
more.
40.
Correct. We're going to be doing 2 more. So first is going to be the Callahan site because that's one of our primary sites.
Yep.
And then we're going to do the one behind the PD.
Okay, so the line item for B pays for 2, Callahan and PD.
Correct.
And then the generator replacement, is that for 1 or 2?
That's for 1 generator. That's
And
the
where's
next one
that?
is right now we're working on getting quotes for the Kelleher site with past money that we have.
Okay,
This one's going to be going up to the Callahan site. Both are 24-ish years old.
now the former deputy mayor, this is gonna be his question, but I am interested. So like, how do we know we're not just replacing these because of the term,
Because how old
use,
they are?
lost use? Yeah, like maybe they're good for another 20 years. This is Tom Mazzarella speaking right
No,
now.
and,
outside of
and
me.
that's perfectly logical.
You know what I mean? Like-
what we're looking at is for the critical infrastructure, we have had breakdowns of both those generators on site.
Yeah.
The town has had to come out with a portable generator and put those in place while we get the main generators fixed. Parts for those generators are starting to be harder and harder to come by. And with the critical infrastructure that it supports, we want to make sure that those generators run. And now the Kelleher Court site, we're also renting to the city of Hartford as well. So we're pretty much got to power not only our shelter, but their critical infrastructure as well.
So some of them have been breaking down.
Yes.
Do you have any like feeling like oftenness? Is it like, hey,
We've
I
had-
put new tires on my car, like, yeah, they were awful, but like once you do it, you're good for another 4 or 5, whatever.
The frequency that the generators run, they run once a week as a test. It can happen at any time. They can, with the parts that are being placed on those generators, it's depending on where they get them, how reliable it's going to be. It's not something I would like to take a chance with, because if we have a bad event here where we lose power at one of those sites and we lose, partial portion of our radio system, that's a lot of people put in danger. So
So how often has the HVAC system or the generators fail?
The HVAC systems, we've currently taken over the maintenance of those with a maintenance contract company.
Okay.
Those are operating, the gentleman who did them said, you're past end of life, but we can keep them going for a little while. He says you need to start looking at replacing them. He's one of the 3 people that we've had quoted, so it's not that we're locked into him.
Sure, I get it.
But everybody we've had come out and look at them sort of giggled and said, these are still operating?
Yeah.
So
Well, he does a good job.
our maintenance crew from physical services has maintained them up to a certain point, but we've got specialists coming in to keep them running.
And the generator, has it, when you tested it, he's like, okay, it needs to be fixed once, 3 in the last 10 years, in the last
testing is
year?
just a test run as far as it starts up, make sure that it starts and powers up for about a half hour or so, just like a home generator.
Yeah.
We do have alarm systems set into those generators that if we are low on fuel, if we have a coolant issue or anything like that, it sends it out through our radio system, sends out emails and messages to myself, John, dispatch. So we know there's an issue, we can get physical services down to start looking at the problem.
And how often has that happened in the last year, say?
I'd probably say at least a couple, it's not like an everyday thing, because we're not always using the generators. We've had more issues with the electronic components of it. The generator itself, the motor, works. It's usually the electronic components that are powering and doing the switch over, that's what's failing.
And you've had 1 or 2 issues over the last year?
At one of the sites, we've had a couple. We keep getting alarms through. I can give you a list of the alarms that we get if you'd like. It's probably much longer than we'd want to spend here on it, but I can get you alarms that we have every day coming in.
Okay, thanks for your insight.
Okay.
Any other questions, councilors?
Hang on.
Council Bailey?
The upgrade that you're about to go, the upgrade you're about to go through, how long is that gonna last, and how long before this radio system is not supported?
So the upgrade that we're currently looking at and the way we're looking to span the upgrade is going to be a 10-year span for that, and that's going to include 2 upgrades of our system. About every 8 years or so is the current outlook for upgrading the infrastructure of the radio system. So just like any computers for businesses or anything like that, because most of this is computer-based now, is going to be about 8. We can possibly push it to 10, but you're looking at like the current system that we have now, we're behind, we're running Windows, I think it's XP or NT technology right now, and we can't even service some of the stuff. So some of the things that we've had for upgrades that have been sent out by Harris, we don't qualify for and we can't put into our system, so it's putting us behind the 8 ball. So we're looking at, if we were able to push this upgrade through, it would push us out to about 16 years before we'd have to look at something again.
All right, and you said the mass swap out with the 200s, is that 1-for-1 like?
That's going to be the new style radio for the fire department. The current plan we're going with is we have 80 portables with the fire department. So with those 80 portables, we're going to take the XL200 platform, which is the older style, push those down throughout the town. We've already started with engineering. We've gotten a couple others through IT and stuff like that. We're able to, instead of buy separate radios for the fire department and then just buy a separate class for everybody else, we already have a good base, and the XL200 is a great platform. So we can continue using that. The end of life of those radios is probably within that 16-year time frame that we're going to have. The reason why we're moving to the XL400s for the fire department is because it's the most current NFPA certified radio. Drop testing, it has connections to their SCOT masks. They can actually do PAR checks. There's a lot of things that they can do to keep our firefighters safe. The XL200 platform is still very viable for the police and everybody else in town, but it would just make more sense money-wise for us to be able to take radios we already own and push them down instead of trying to buy separate types.
No, makes sense. The last question is the seats in these classes. You took one at Hartford?
Yes, we took 3.
Now, that's got to be a pay-by-seat thing, or
We
is it
didn't
just?
pay anything for Hartford's.
Okay.
They offered it up to us. That was part of their radio upgrade costs. in talking with the city of Hartford, pretty much we're able to do a one-for-one. So they have 2, possibly 3 people that would be involved.
Okay.
We'd have probably 5 on our.
So it's even.
on our side. Yeah, it's an even
All right,
swap.
good enough.
Thank you, Councilor Bailey. Anything else?
I do. Could you explain about the shelters? What's in the shelter? And does each one control a certain part of the town, or does each one do everything?
They're actually intermixed, and I apologize, I actually had a schematic that I was gonna hand to everybody, so it actually explained this.
Okay.
And I had some pictures of the shelters. Unfortunately, the copy downstairs, the mailroom is not working right now, it's all jammed up.
You can
So
email
I
it to
do
me and I'll
apologize.
provide them.
What's that?
You can email them and I'll.
Yeah,
provide them.
I'll email everybody on the council, and that way you guys will have the schematics. But what basically it is, there's a core for the system. The core from the system is, it's a redundant system, so we have one at Kelleher Court site and then one at the PD. With those 2 cores, we can have one failure and one would take over. We've had that actually happen just recently. One of our UPSs failed during a power outage, and it actually switched over flawlessly. Nobody noticed the difference other than us having to scramble to try to find UPS batteries within midnight. So it's basically one core supports the whole system. So all of our sites have an integrated part to the system. So it's for coverage. It's almost like if you have a tower here, you've got like a domed coverage area, and you overlap with all the different sites.
And we rent one to Hartford, or do we still not?
The
we do
shelter that we're renting is, they'll be putting stuff on our Kelleher Court tower. That shelter was our old shelter that we had when Nextel moved out of the current shelter that we're in at Kelleher Court. It was newer, so we took that shelter over. That shelter sat vacant for quite a while, I think about 7 years or so. Now that the city of Hartford's doing their upgrade, they've noticed that they have some dead areas in the south end, so they needed a site on that end, so we were able to provide them that and rent them the shelter, so that they're gonna move all their stuff in. There's some differences in power and stuff, which is not a big deal, but we've already figured that out through the engineers, so. And they've actually already started moving into the shelter, they've cleaned it out, and they have a company, Blue Wing, that's managing their transition.
You good?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Clancy. Anyone else? Bob, did you have anything else?
No, just if anybody has any questions for me, please feel free.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all you, oh, did you have one more?
Just
Deputy
one more.
Mayor?
Yeah, thanks. Bob, I have a radio question here.
Sure.
So, like, if we're in rural Connecticut, where the land area is larger than Wethersfield, and they still need coverage to, all their neighborhoods, even though there are fewer people and fewer neighborhoods. You're out in Salisbury, right, or Pomfret, or whatever it is. Are they paying millions? I mean, you still need towers with things like the same equipment, and that is Pomfret, at whatever their population is, 2,500 people, paying $3 million, for these things?
Depending on their size of their system and what system they're sort of going with, or what they're actually keeping, can vary in what their costs are. My full-time position, I'm actually helping with that radio system switch over to a P25 system for the state.
At Pomfret?
No, in the state. for-
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, I picked a
Yeah,
random
that's pretty
town.
random.
That was pretty random, right? Yeah.
So they're looking at a very large cost. I don't want to speak to their costs. but
Sure.
It would be more than what we're spending. So, and I can actually go into a little bit further detail with you personally and go over that.
When you say they, are you talking about the state of Connecticut?
Yes.
So, like, but the rural towns, how do they, I mean, for our town, it's tough to swallow, but we have a lot of people to share the load.
Yep.
But for smaller towns, how do they share the load of these types of, they still have fire departments, they still
It all
have,
depends. Some of them
regional-
have shared services, where you have like Talon County. Talon County does their dispatching. They have certain radio frequencies that they use. Some of them are low band, some of them are VHF. But with the encrypted P25 system that we have, it's a huge cost. It's just, there's no way around it.
And so those towns with those small populations
Not
share.
everybody has a P25 system though. So if they don't have our type of system, then you could probably do different things. But now your reliability and your security and stuff like that come into play.
So do those smaller towns then take these risks on? Because they have a fire department that's got to go fight a house fire the same as we do here, I would imagine, generally
Yep.
speaking.
Yep.
and maybe even travel further distances with even more mountains than we have, and all those things, especially if you're up in like Salisbury and Kent and like all those places.
Yep.
So do they just have they take on these risks and they're okay with that?
That's up to them, yeah. I mean, that's their prerogative as far as how they want to attack that. I know that depending where you are, certain types of radios work better. Right now, we've got a very good coverage area in our town. There are a couple of less than optimal areas that we have that we're going to be ordering BDAs inside town buildings to take care of. And that's just basically like a miniature antenna to help boost the signal in those buildings.
So do they use like regional aspect? Is it regionalized for them? Like, do they put like 6 towns together to do this?
Some do, some. It's not always, it's dependent on where you are. I can't speak for some of the towns.
So I'm going to interrupt here, and I liked your
We're
offer.
getting into a contract
Well,
issue?
no,
Unintentionally. but
No,
like-
Bob, I appreciate your offer of maybe with the deputy mayor and anybody else who
Yeah,
wants to.
anybody who else wants to.
have a conversation a little bit offline.
Yep.
We are on a little bit of a tight schedule we have engineering
Yeah, I don't wanna go there,
at
so.
7, and we have another meeting in the chambers at 7. So it's okay. If there's no further, hard stop at 7 with another group coming in here. So thank you, appreciate all that you do, and if the deputy mayor.
I'm done.
And anyone else for that matter wants to discuss with you
Yeah,
personally.
please do
Okay.
reach out
Thank you,
by
Bob.
email and I can help out and
Thank you.
explain a little better.
Engineering, you're up next.
Thanks, Bobby.
You guys.
Well, I was wondering that, is like, if, based on what you had just said, if you have a town, you don't have a police department, but you have a resident state trooper, do you have access then to the state police radio situation?
They have the radios, they have, yeah, I can talk about rural towns and how they deal with
I would love to hear.
Like, how does Comfort, like, they're bigger, 3 times the size, we need towers and coverage, like, we don't, like, leave those guys
I have
out.
to leave here and go to Bull
They
Run.
do actually leave them out. They don't have the towers and coverage. It's just a different, they don't have the demand that we do, to put simply. And yes, they are at risk, and yes, they have issues, but
So, like, why do they get, like, they just, they're fine.
it's
Yeah,
a
I
different
know.
animal. We have a lot more need than they do.
I get that, obviously, population thing,
Yeah.
it's like covered, it's like, we need to make more fun. I don't know, okay, we'll talk.
But I am correcting that saying that.
Sorry about that. Hi, Derek.
Hello.
Welcome.
Sorry,
And
I had a question.
you have the floor, and we're happy here, appreciate all you do, and engineering is up. So Derek, please.
All right, thank you. I'll try and talk quickly.
We have till 7, so.
Till 7, okay.
Yeah.
So my name is Derek Greger, I'm the town engineer. I'm representing the engineering department tonight. For those of you that don't know, pretty much we manage the right-of-way. We issue over 400 permits a year. We inspect that work. We inspect private construction jobs, provide survey, design services for the town. We have 6 full-time employees and 1 seasonal who works April through November. Our budget request this year is $1,252,778. I was going to work through the spreadsheet, just talk about some of the changes that we're requesting. In the top, as far as staffing, it's the same. We have 6 full-time and then 1 seasonal. I am requesting some funding for an engineering intern. We've had a couple interns over the last few years that have been very helpful to us. We don't have an admin staff, so with the combination of that and just a lot of low-level technical data crunching, it's been a good experience for us. It's been a low-cost, high-value process, and I have done it in the past just with vacancies that I've had in positions where I've had salary available to pay for them. But we found it very useful, and we've had a couple of local kids that have come in, one starting on a new job next week at DOT, just that he got from the experience here with the town. So that's one of my requests. The other slight increase is just related to the recording secretary, just having to do with the amount of hours for inland wetlands and capital improvement advisory committee meetings. The costs have gone up a little bit. Moving down to travel, training, and dues. Slight increases for some of these just based on the cost increases. We do have a new EIT, that's engineer in training in our office, who is interested in becoming a PE. I'm hoping he will take the test for that and maybe get it this year, so there's a little bit extra funding in there for that license as well when he comes on board. Moving down a couple of lines to professional services. This is a new request we haven't had in the past. We do have, we have a lot to do. Our staff has grown a little bit, and it's been very helpful, although there are times when there is work that's needed that's a little bit beyond our ability or our software, such as sometimes complex drainage calculations that need to be done or structural calculations. Sometimes we need some support for grant applications on some projects where we might reach out to a consultant that's more familiar with this type of work and ask them to provide us with some cost and some scope of work. So having some funds available to reach out to them when we need to would be helpful. Next category for repair and maintenance of equipment. There's a lot of changes in here, starting at the top with the pavement markings. Recent discussions with physical services is they're going to start to paint the lots, that's the school lots and the town lots. Instead of us doing it, they're going to do it in-house, so that's why the cost, the request has gone down from $55,000 last year to $50,000 this year. Second item is guide rail installation. That's something that was recently transferred from responsibility from physical services to engineering. We do have a lot of guide rail in town that is in need of repair, and guide rail gets hit throughout the year, so this is really for maintenance. We do have a CIP request for much larger work, which will require replacement and extensive repairs, but we do need to have some funding available just for at least those maintenance or areas that we have identified that have some smaller locations that we could do with a project each year. Couple items down, contract to maintain town sidewalks. As with everything, the costs have gone up. We do have a lot of sidewalk needs. This funding is really for addressing issues in front of town properties. I don't know if you see my email today. I had sent out an email to one of the residents that's been looking for more improvements in sidewalks. We have changed our policy a little bit, where we're going to be more aggressive about trying to get property owners to do the repairs. And as part of that, we're looking to lead by addressing our own problems, because we do have some issues in front of town walks. We did a lot last year in front of town properties. We did a lot last year with grinding or other methods that does allow us to do it at a more cost-effective rate. But I think this $35,000 that I've gotten in past years, that's been like that since I came in 2016. So I'm just looking for a little bit more, because that money doesn't go as far as it used to with the cost increases we're seeing in construction. A couple items down, there's a couple new items. One is miscellaneous drainage. That is really just to have some money available when we need to add some catch basins or install some drainage pipe or deal with some issues in easements. We have a lot of these small types of projects that don't warrant a full bid project or maybe even capital funds. It is a request in my capital request of $50,000, which is how it's been done in past years. I haven't always gotten that. So my request would be to have that actually in my operating budget, because it is something we need to do to effectively manage the right-of-way, and at least have some money for at least some of those smaller repairs that do come up throughout the year that may be outside of what physical services is available to do or can do. The next item was catch basin cleaning and inspection. That's a new item that historically physical services had. We're taking over that role as part of just more oversight and management of the right-of-way. This ties directly to our MS4 permit we have with DEEP, where we have to do catch basin cleaning every year. We have to do so many inspections every year, so it will help us just to have better oversight over the contractor to kind of maintain what we need to do and manage that process. So that request is new, but that's something we've been doing as a town. We're just going to take over that responsibility. CCTV drainage inspections. I used to get 15,000. It was reduced to 10. I'm just asking for getting back to 15. Costs have gone up with that. Generally, it costs me 7,000 or 8,000 usually to get them into town to do a number of locations, and we do have those that come up throughout the year where it's more cost effective for us to run cameras down the pipes and see what's going on than to try and just start digging up pipes everywhere. It's been helpful in a lot of instances, so just asking for a slight increase back to the $15,000 level. And the last item in that category for wetlands flagging from 800 to 1,200. Same thing. I had a soil scientist who I worked with for a long time, very cheap. He's retired. Now when we go get quotes, they tend to be a little bit higher than they used to be, so looking for a slight increase there.
What is it?
For wetlands flagging?
What is wetlands flagging?
Yeah, so for certain projects that might be located near a wetland, we're required to have a soil scientist who's certified in the state go out and sample the soil and delineate where the wetland type soils that are wet and have certain types of vegetation changes to regular soil. So they'll flag it,
On the line.
Okay.
and then we'll go out and survey and locate it, and that's a regulated area. So if we get into disturbing those types of areas, then we have to go to Inland Wetlands Commission, so it's a requirement for permitting. A lot of our projects, we live in a very wet town, very low lying, so a lot of them require that, depending on where we're working.
I did that for years. I can take that and show you how to do that.
Oh,
It's
yeah?
great fun.
Okay.
It's something that,
No, I'm very serious.
yeah, it's nothing we can do in-house. We need a certified
Should we
soil
wait to the
scientist, so
end?
you generally hire them on a case-by-case basis when you need them.
Derek, I think, and given the time that we have, we'll take questions as we go, and I think Council
Okay.
Carbone, yeah, Shelley, go.
Thank you. So you've mentioned a few times that you're taking over some projects or some maintenance work from physical services. Can you explain to me how that kind of came about? Is that something,
Yeah, sure. That's just been discussions that Sally and I have had with Fred about how to better delineate who's responsible for what work, so that way there's less confusion as to who's budgeting for what work. So in particular, like this catch basin inspection program, we've been relying on them to report to us on it, and with us trying to take get a better handle on what work's going on in town. So for instance, any contractor that comes in has to get permits from us. We know where they're working and when they're working, what they're doing. Now we're starting a new policy with physical services where they're going to fill out a sheet for us and let us know, hey, we've been out here, we've added a couple catch basins here and there. So it's really to have a better handle on the drainage system, because we are the ones that certify for the MS4 permit every year. Every year have to certify and sign off that we are doing so much catch basin cleaning. It's a very involved document, but that is part of it.
so it gives you more control
So it's just
over
more
it?
control over that and being able to work directly with the contractor.
So it becomes
Also-
more efficient for you?
Yeah, I
for
believe
them.
that's the reason. So that's something that, there's two components to that contract. Some of it's road sweeping, some of it is catch basin inspection and cleaning. They're still going to manage the road sweeping. We're just taking over this portion of that contract that exists.
And the guardrail, kind of same situation, or?
Yeah, same situation. That came up recently where Sally, I think, felt it was better in engineering. So we have the ability to look if A, it's needed, or B, if there's some design required for it, we can do it ourselves.
Okay. And then the other question is sidewalks. So that's a huge issue in town with the sidewalks. Everybody, I mean, yeah, we all know. So can you please, maybe this is for people too that are listening to this. So the contract to maintain town sidewalks, is that the gentleman that goes and marks them? Is that the guy who shaves it down? Is that where that money is going to?
No, so as far as the gentleman that we have on staff, that's our seasonal inspector. He works usually April through November. We didn't have funding to fund it for the whole year, so we worked it out where he works 30 hours a week, and he's available during the construction season. That's when we're busiest, so that works out for
So
that.
his salary comes out of this or your,
That's up above, I think just below
Yep.
item number 6 at the top, we have our seasonal inspector, that's
Okay.
where he is paid.
what-
This particular item for sidewalks that you're asking about, we allocate those funds for our contractors that come in and do work for us. So we are doing, physical services does do some of that work, so sometimes we're paying for those materials. Also, we have an on-call contractor that when it's beyond what they can or are available to do, will come in and do that work.
so this is sidewalks on town property?
It's more in front of town property. So the delineation generally between us and physical services, or myself and Sally Katz, is she will manage properties. So sidewalks on properties, she's handling. Sidewalks in the right-of-way are our responsibility.
Okay.
So any town properties, we're responsible for fixing the walks in front. So any contractors that may come in and do grinding or slab jacking or slab replacement comes out of this budget.
So property owners, regular residents see Sally Katz for their sidewalks? Or deal with Sally Katz?
Only, she's responsible for town properties. So private properties, if people have concerns regarding their sidewalk or the town sidewalk in front of their property that they're responsible for, we deal with that.
You deal with that?
Yes.
Okay, because it just gets a little confusing, and I think we
Yep.
get some wires crossed somewhere. So
Understood.
again, so that $40,000 you're asking for is for you to physically create repairs to sidewalks that are on right-of-ways?
That are in, along town frontage. So
Okay.
schools,
And
any
that-
town properties, yes.
That's it?
And we,
That's all it does?
we spend through that every year. I mean, generally,
Okay.
this time of year, I'm kind of having to withhold doing work
Sure.
until we get more funding. So that's why I'm asking for some more.
So the next one too, the Town Sidewalk Assistance Program, how did that work last year, the $25,000? Has that been exhausted?
Not yet.
Okay.
We've had, so far, about 8 applicants that have qualified. We've
Okay.
done 2, we did 2 of those locations last fall. We have 6 more on tap right now. I think to date, we've either spent or have, our plan to spend up to $15,000 of that. So I have about $10,000 left. That's something, a conversation we can have. We are getting some people that qualify. I don't know the percentage of how many people apply actually are getting qualified, because it goes through social and youth services. But right now, we have not spent down that money for this fiscal year yet, so there's a little bit left.
Okay,
I think as the word's getting out and people are becoming more aware of it, when we do issue a repair notice, we include information about what their responsibilities are and about that program, and if they're interested in applying, they have an application form they can submit. So we do provide that to everybody that gets a notice saying you have to repair these sidewalks, and, many have applied, it's just we haven't had too many that meet the criteria that we're using, which at this time is a very low criteria. We follow the social and youth services process for that.
Okay, and I guess this is a question for Michael. If that money's not spent by, was it June, would that just roll over into next year's kitty for the sidewalk, or would that be something that goes back into the fund? Oh, jeez. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Good evening, Mike O'Neill, Director of Finance.
But you're the others.
Those are, you're specifically talking about the funds that are in the general fund?
Just, no, I'm
For
specifically
sidewalks.
talking about the yes, the
Sidewalk
sidewalk.
assistance program.
Yes.
That's, anything in the general fund lapses at the end of the fiscal year if it's not spent.
Okay.
However, the council has the option, if you recall, in the summertime, or late summer, August, typically, we come to you with suggestions for how to transfer
So it's the
leftover
same.
funds. Then if we transfer funds into a non-lapsing fund like CIP, then they can be held there. And so that's what we've done in the past.
Program, the money would stay. Okay.
Yep.
If it doesn't. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Carbone. Further council questions? Counselor Zambrell.
So in that same vein, because I was also curious about the program Councilor Carbone was asking about, can you talk a little bit more about what the criteria are that social and youth services are using? I'm just curious if on our end there's any wiggle room there to, if we have money that we're not spending, could we expand those criteria a bit?
Yeah, I can't speak to the specifics as to the criteria. I think it has to do with residents at a certain income level qualify for certain programs, and if they qualify for those programs, they will qualify for this.
Okay.
Likewise, if they don't, then they don't qualify for this. But we can get you that information as to
Okay,
what the
yeah, I'd be
specifics
interested to
are.
learn more about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Counselor Zambrell. Deputy Mayor Forrest.
Derek, whose responsibility is it to do the sidewalk inspections? Is that, whose responsibility is it?
It's engineering department. It's our-
But is there a specific person, there's a sidewalk inspector versus like a zoning inspector versus like a, we've got sort of a lot of enforcement people. I'm trying to understand which person they are.
Right. So our seasonal construction inspector, his primary role is sidewalks. We only have one other full-time inspector, so they both overlap. We do need our seasonal inspector to do other types of work as well. However, as I was indicating earlier, we have kind of changed the program now where we're being more aggressive than we used to be, in the sense of we go out, if we find that there's a problem, we are looking at our roads that we're paving as part of our paving program. We inspect all those because we want to try and do the sidewalks when we're doing the paving work.
Yeah.
But we do have a lot of other areas we go to. So the process is, if we identify there's a trip hazard, we'll issue a notice, give them 45 days to comply. We go back and check. If they don't, they get a second notice with 30 days to comply. And basically, the last chance, if they still haven't, we issue a third and final notice, let them know if they do not complete the work by a certain date, then we are going to proceed with doing it. And the way the ordinance is written is we do the work, and then we put a lien on the property.
I understand. I was just asking about who does
Yeah.
it. So, is there any specific technical knowledge that this person might have versus other officers, who enforce zoning regulations and those types of things?
Yes.
What is sort of generally the background that this person needs to have in order to do that? Like, we have a person that does, all kinds of enforcement, because we've got obviously a lot of quality of life issues that revolve around all kinds of enforcement issues.
Yeah, so he's technical. This particular gentleman he worked in concrete all his life. He did that for a number of years, so he's very familiar with it. So it's somebody who understands the process. Aside from doing inspections and issuing notices, he inspects out the work that's being done. So whether a private owner hires somebody to come into the right-of-way and do work for them, or we're paying for them, he watches the work they do and makes sure that we're getting what we're paying for.
And where in your budget am I finding that individual?
He is item.
Under 6.
Yeah, under number 6.
Seasonal construction
Seasonal.
inspector,
Okay.
37,370.
And do you know how many, I don't know, however you want to define it, miles, quarter miles, feet, yards, what distance does he inspect in a particular year?
Well, I don't have that information. We do want to get to a point when we have an inspection program and we could say we inspect X amount of feet per year. We
Yeah.
just haven't gotten there yet. We're still kind of working through some backlog, and we have a new policy which takes a lot of effort to go back and coordinate. I mean, that's one of the challenges with this position, and that responsibility is trying to coordinate with property owners and have them pay for work in the right of way. It does take a lot of back and forth and contact and discussions, which takes a lot of time.
And what would it take to have a program such as you described?
Having it more of a detailed inspection program where we could break up the town into areas, that's what I would like to do.
Yeah.
I think at this point, it's always staff and time. That's the type of thing an intern can help us with, because they can do those types of things and help us. One concern I have, and I've had the conversation with the manager, is, we can only handle so many. So we could go out and spend weeks issuing hundreds of these notices, but the idea is really to follow through and get them done. So we're still trying to kind of figure out what is that threshold? How many can we really issue? Because sometimes it's going to be 3 notices before it gets done, and other times people will take care of it, and it varies quite a bit.
Derek, you mentioned in the past the need for additional engineers, and not just one. There's clerk, intern, additional engineers. Just like if we wanted to pave more roads, like everybody wants, and we allocate the money or we get a grant, the difficulty that your staff has of having that capacity, I guess is fair to say. And while we have recently hired, put in place another engineer in your staff, in the past, I remember seeing multiples of these types of demands. So why are we not requesting any more capacity if, as we've talked many times, the work is there in bucket loads, like not even like 3%. Like we talk, we can't even get to this because we just don't have the capacity. But I'm not seeing like really an increase in capacity. I know you have the intern in there, but am I missing that, or is it there that I'm not seeing?
Well, to be honest with you, we have a space problem. I'm already, when we do have an intern, they're sharing a desk with one of our inspectors because we don't physically have the space. The request I had this year was for a full-time or a part-time admin. I don't think it made the budget recommendation, but that is something that would help us because we have a lot of our technical staff doing a lot of administrative work that they could be doing other things with that time.
Okay, so you did request that, but the town manager's budget doesn't have it in there. Is that right here?
You have to ask. I didn't see it in this list, but I assume that was why.
So that would be, the next person for you would be this individual?
I think that would be helpful for us to reallocate some of our resources to where they'd be better served, yeah.
What was that called?
Just an administrative assistant. But there again, we still have space problems as well.
I'm gonna close this. Derek, if we need, I don't know if you were done with anything else you want to go, if we need you to come back one of the other evenings, I'll let you and the town manager talk about that. For the council and the public, we do have another scheduled workshop tomorrow at 6 o'clock here, and I'm gonna close this budget workshop. I know there's another meeting happening right at 7, so thank you, everybody, and we'll see. I actually need a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Sue.
So moved.
Second.
I've got Councilor Zambrello, Deputy Mayor, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.